Hey guys, so I want to start with section 1.1, okay? And this is mostly a review. We're looking at, specifically in this section, we want to look at equations in two variables. So notice I have something like this, y equals x cubed minus 1, okay? And we want to graph that for x equal to -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3, okay? So if you remember, you can plot these equations just by plugging in values of x and finding the corresponding y. So that's what they're asking us to do here. This is probably a review, which is good if it is, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make an xy table right here, okay? And I can see if x is, say, we'll start with -1, then y is going to be -1 cubed minus 1. Notice I'm taking the -1, I'm putting it in right for the x, okay? This is -1 minus 1. That's going to be -2. So I see that I have the point -1 comma -2 on my graph. So if I go over here, down here, -1, -2 is right here. Okay, I'll do some more points. Well, what if I go ahead and I pick 0 for x? That's usually pretty easy, okay? If I pick 0 for x, then I plug it in. I get 0 cubed minus 1 is -1. So I have 0 comma -1. 0 comma -1 is right here on our graph, okay? I can do the point 1. That's 1 cubed minus 1. It's going to be 1 minus 1, which is 0. So I also have the point 1, 0 down here. Okay. And remember, all I'm doing is I'm just taking whatever my x value is, plugging it in for x here, and figuring out what it is. Okay. I'll try another point 2. That would be 2 cubed minus 1, which is 8 minus 1. Which is 7. So things are getting big fast. So I know way up here somewhere, I have the point 2 comma 7. So you can sort of see what's happening, okay? Now, I don't have enough room to do all the points, so I'll leave it at that, but you should get a general shape that looks something like this, okay? This is just shooting up, and then down here, this will end up, you should see that this shoots down. Why don't you go ahead and check that, make sure that is in fact what happens, okay? Now, the other thing is you can always go through and you can graph this, right? So you can use your graphing calculator. Let me clear that out. And the way I would type this in is I would do this. I would do x, so probably in parentheses, x to the third, okay, minus 1, okay? And I'll zoom, 6. And you see it looks pretty much the same. So we do have these graphing calculators as tools, so feel free to use those. Okay. Now, look at another one. Number 44 just asks us for x and y intercepts. And if you remember, x-intercepts are just where we cross the x-axis, where we cross this guy. The y-intercepts are where we cross this guy. One important thing moving forward that might help you is at an x-intercept, right? So when we cross the horizontal line, you can see that y is equal to 0, right? If y is equal to 1 here and -1 here, it must be 0 on this whole horizontal line. Likewise, the y-intercept is when x equal to 0, okay? Now, here it's pretty easy to identify the x and the y-intercepts. I need the coordinate, not just the value of the x or the y. So I look at this and I say, okay, well, that's the point 1, 0. That's one of the x-intercepts. And this is one of the x-intercepts. Okay, so I'll draw a little arrow, x-intercepts. And finally, my y-intercept would be the point 0, 1. Not too hard. Last problem I want to look at from section 1 is 76. But before that, I want to just give you a little refresher here, okay? The refresher is about the coordinate system, okay? So we know we have a rectangular coordinate system, okay? And I have my x-axis and my y-axis. And if you remember, these have names, each of these quadrants, quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant quadrant 4. It goes in a counterclockwise fashion, and that's because of trigonometry, if you've ever had any trig. Okay, and notice I'm just writing down, x is greater than 0, y is greater than 0. That's always true in this quadrant. X's are positive, y's are positive. Quadrant 2, y's are still positive, but x's are negative or less than 0. Both are less than 0 in quadrant 3, and y is less than 0 in quadrant 4. Obviously, you can see x is positive again. So 76 is saying, for which quadrants in the xy plane is y divided by x less than 0? Well, that's the same as saying, when is this fraction negative? Right? Something is less than 0 if it's negative. Well, how could a fraction be negative? Well, if the top was negative and the bottom was positive, it would be negative or less than 0, or vice versa. If the bottom was negative and the top was positive. If both of them are negative, then a negative divided by negative would be a positive. That wouldn't work. So in which quadrants, this is what we want to ask ourselves, is one of these values negative and one of these positive? Well, you should see that that's true here in quadrant 2, right? X is less than 0, y is greater than 0. And in quadrant 4, x is greater than 0, y is less than 0. So quadrant 2 and quadrant 4. That does it for section 1.